Hello, today's passage is Matthew chapter 1, 18 to 25. And it's a famous passage, that captures Jesus' conception, interactions with Mary and Joseph and an angel, the fulfillment of prophecy as well. And I want to draw attention first off to verse 18, 19. This is how the birth of Jesus Christ came about. His mother Mary was pledged to be married to Joseph, but before they came together, she was found to be with child through the Holy Spirit. Because Joseph, her husband, was a righteous man and did not want to expose her to public disgrace, he had in mind to divorce her quietly. So I told you it was a known passage, and straight away what we need to understand is a little bit about marriage in those times. It was a little bit different in many ways, probably, but more precisely, it was the engagement was different. And you'll see this from different translations. My translation says Mary was pledged to be married to Joseph. Some our translations struggle with that word engagement because it was more than just a promise that is given in these days. Other translations say betrothed. Mary was betrothed to be with Joseph, or to be married to Joseph. It was more like a marriage contract back then. It was done by parents committing their son, daughter to people to be married, and the marriage would come later. And this betrothal to each other, it could only be broken by divorce, not like the Western engagements now that can be broken up discreetly. So when I read this at first, I'm always thinking, Joseph, why would you do that to your divorce? Why would you want to divorce your rather dazed fiance? I mean, can you imagine what this would have been like for Mary? But knowing that about marriage, it makes a bit more sense. He was being faithful to the law, which allowed divorce on the grounds of unfaithfulness, and he wanted to honour Mary by not exposing her to public disgrace. So yay, Joseph. But all of that becomes almost irrelevant, doesn't it, as an angel appears to Joseph saying, it's fine, God's hand is on this. And we see Joseph remarkably accepting Jesus as his son, adopting him as his own, which again is just a remarkable way for Jesus's conception, that he is adopted in that way. And it is a fulfillment of prophecies. And what we see in this passage and in Matthew's gospel and other gospel is so many fulfillments of prophecy. In fact, biblical scholars say that they point to over 300 fulfillments of prophecy relating to Jesus, his birth, his conception, his life, his death. And if we're honest, we can get a bit used to these prophecies cropping up, can't we? But I just want to take a moment and have us reflect on how Matthew, this evangelist, sees this prophecy from Isaiah that we see here. And what Isaiah wrote in 8th century BC, some 700 years before Jesus' coming, he expected to be fulfilled in his own time. And now Matthew, all these centuries later, saw it finally arriving, the prophecy fulfilled. Or to put it another way, what Isaiah foresaw as a new era to come, Matthew saw as present. The birth of Jesus is a sign of God's presence that was with them. Emmanuel, God with us. And this theme of Emmanuel, God with us, in this passage, the coming of Jesus into the world is the sign of God being with us. And what a sign it is. It's unmistakable. You know, there's so many signs that point people to God. Some people say, I find God in nature, or I find God in the historical evidence of Jesus and of Old Testament things or whatever, or I see the evidence of God in my own experience through answers to prayer. But many of those can be a little bit ambiguous, can't they? But this one is not. Jesus came into the world to reveal God and to redeem it, to show us that nature of God who loves us and who wants to save us from our sin. And what's more is the people around Jesus, the believers, both in those times and still today, are to be a sign in the world that God is with us, Emmanuel. And I remember my parents in the 90s were part of a church plant called Emmanuel, and they believed that God was with them and that they were to be assigned, that small group of believers were to be assigned to the estate around them, that God was with them and that they were to point people to Jesus. And I was thinking that's the name of every church, really, isn't it? Every household of believers, every missional community at Frontline. It's that God is with us, and perhaps it's something we might want to reflect on and celebrate. That God is with you, that God is with me, that God is with us, and that we are to point people to God, that we're to be a sign that God is here, that Jesus has come and that Jesus has paid a way for us to live in relationship with him. So just a few thoughts for today. Have a blessed day.